Hello and welcome to episode 5 of how to compose cinematic music for film, TV shows, and video games. In the last episode, we talked about what makes a melody, what makes harmony, and how they together come to create what we think of as themes. In today's video, we're going to hop right into creating our very first theme. So that is going to be it for the intro. Let's hop on over into Ableton and get started writing a theme. Okay, so here we are in our DAW. Once again, you don't have to necessarily be using Ableton. You can use whichever DAW is most comfortable for you and whichever DAW you own. But today I'm going to be using Ableton, and I'm going to be using the free version of the BBC Symphony Orchestra and the piano that comes with it to write our first theme. So as I said in the last video, a lot of themes start with 8 bars. So that's exactly what we're going to do, is we're just going to create 8 bars of empty music. So let's highlight our MIDI track, which has our piano on it. In this case, it is the first one for myself. I'm going to go from 1 all the way up to 9, which means 8 bars of music. Then I'm going to right click near the top here, and I'm going to hit insert empty MIDI clip. Great, so here I am with an empty MIDI clip. I have my MIDI keyboard in front of me, armed and ready to compose. So if I hit a note, we're going to hear it. Okay, so here we are. We've got 8 bars in front of us, and we're trying to write our very first theme. Where the heck do we start? What do we do? Do we just start drawing in notes and hope they sound good together? No, let's not do that. Let's have a little bit more of a plan. So this is where I think I'm going to differ my approach from a lot of tutorial series. I think many tutorial series go into depth on things like harmony and cadences and different key signatures and what that all means before we get into writing any themes. I'd rather start writing themes, give you a few rules that you're just gonna have to trust me to follow in the beginning, and then over time we're gonna see why they work, and then later we're gonna see when you might consider breaking them. But for now, let's talk about scales, which is something I could make multiple videos about. But for today's video, I'm just gonna introduce you to one scale and one version of it. We are going to talk about C minor. So if you've ever taken any sort of elementary school music class or anything along those lines, you've probably heard of a major versus a minor scale. Essentially what that means is that a scale is limiting the number of options that we have in front of us so that we're not all over the place. In other words, when you look at the piano in front of you, you've got a certain number of notes, right? We start on C, and you've got the C sharp, D, D sharp, E. Now, that's a lot of different notes. It might not seem like it, but it is a lot of different notes to choose from, and it would probably be too many to start with all of them as options. So really what scales are doing, I think a better way to think about them rather than, adding together a group of notes which you can use, is that they're subtracting notes which you can't use. So in C major, what this is indicating to us as composers is that we're only going to be using the white keys on the keyboard. We're going to start on C and only use those white keys. Although major is certainly used in the world of cinematic music, I'm not saying it's not. Every scale is used in cinematic music and in composition, but I think that a little bit more of a common starting place is going to be minor. So here's what I'm going to show you. C minor differs from C major by 3 notes. Our E becomes E flat, goes down to this black key. Our A becomes A flat. Our B becomes B flat. So we have these notes available to us now. We've got C, D, E flat, F, G, A flat, B, and C. 7 unique notes, and we can use different octaves of them. We can use the C way down here. We can use the C way up here, and anything in between, just so long as we're sticking to C, D, E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, and then C again. What this is going to help us avoid is, let's say we go to create a theme, right? And we're just going to start drawing in some notes. I'm just going to click some random notes. I'm going to stick to quarter notes and just see what happens. Let's see what this sounds like. Sounds like a random hodgepodge of notes. But if I were to shift these such that they fit the key of C minor and drag it to the closest note, so this B would become a C. This F sharp could either be an F or a G. Let's make it an F. This A would either be a B flat or an A flat. Let's make it a B flat, and then back up to the B flat. So now let's see what this sounds like. It might not sound a lot more organized right now, but I promise you it is, and we're going to see even in more depth why that is in just a moment. So This is going to help a little bit in the melody creation process, but as you can see there, even just fixing that to make sure that all the notes that I drew in were in C minor, this doesn't help us get a complete musical idea or something that sounds really fluid and like it's one thought instead of just a bunch of random different thoughts. So here's actually where I personally think in the beginning is an easier place to start with your theme writing. And that is, as we talked about in the last episode, themes are a combination of harmony and melody. So let's start with our harmony. And this is really where we're going to see the scale come to life and the importance of what a scale is come to life. So another thing I'm going to do in Ableton for now, just to remove any confusion, is I'm going to hit this scale button up in the top left of our screen. And I'm going to leave it on C, and I'm going to make sure I'm selecting minor. And so now what I can do is I can hit this scale button right here, and all it's going to show me are the notes which are in C minor. So if I'm clicking and dragging in notes now, the only ones that I can click and drag in are in C minor. I don't have to worry about memorizing which notes are in C minor. But for now, because the next course of videos, we're going to be writing theme after theme after theme in C minor, do try to memorize it. It's just 7 notes: C, D, E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, C. Just try and memorize them. And remember that when we talk about scales and numbers, when I say 1, I'm referring to the beginning. So C minor starts on C, so 1 is C. So if I drag in a note on C, that is our 1 note. If I go up 1 to D, that's our 2, E flat is our 3, F is our 4, G is our 5, A flat is our 6, B flat is our 7, and C goes back to 1. So we've just got these 7 notes now, like I said. And so let's talk a little bit about harmony in theme writing. This is really where the scale comes out, because it can be a little bit hard to hear when you're just dragging in random notes in the key of C minor. This sounds like one fluid, contained thing, that this is one scale which really goes really well together. But here's where it's going to become really obvious. When we talk about chords, if we make sure that we've only got the notes available to us that are in our key, we can do something really, really easy without explaining to you why it is the case, but it just is the case. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag out this C for one whole bar, and then I'm going to highlight it. I'm going to hold Option on my keyboard and drag up so that I'm dragging in another note of the same length. I'm going to skip the D, go up to E flat, and I'm going to skip the F and go up to G. So when we talk about creating chords, if you're using only the notes in your scale, this is how you create the chords in the scale. If you're starting on C and you want to create a C chord in C minor, let me do this again. I'm going to drag in a note on C, and then I'm going to skip the next note up, and I'm going to go to E flat, and I'm going to skip the next note up, and I'm going to go to G. And now this gives us a C minor chord. And what I can do to really show you the sound of C minor is I'm going to drag in all the chords that we have available to us in C minor. So I'm going to start on C, I'm going to do the same, and the same pattern follows all the way up. So my D chord starts on D, skips 1, goes to F, skips the G, goes to A flat. My E flat skips the F, goes to G, skips the A flat, goes to B flat, and so on and so forth. So we can just continue this. I'm going to hit Command D, go up 1, Command D, go up 1. And then you'll see we've got 7 unique chords because at the end we go back to C minor. Once again, 7 unique notes, 7 unique chords. So when we're writing a theme in C minor, we've got 7 chords, 7 basic triads available to us. This is what we mean when you hear the word triad. This is what we're referring to, are the sort of smallest version of a chord, if you will. A chord has to have 3 unique notes in it in order for it to be called a chord. And so this is what we mean. Just to give you a brief, I don't want to get too far ahead here, but just like a 7 chord, for example, would be, I've got this C minor. I'm going to take my 7th scale degree, which in this case is the B flat. Now this would be a C minor 7 chord. But we're not going to get there. We're just going to stick with triads. A lot of great themes are written with just triads, so don't feel like you're only using beginner chords. This is a phenomenal place to get started. But what this allows us to do is to give us our harmonic options, and you see we've only got 7. And all of a sudden feeling like we've got an infinite number of options to go when creating a theme. Now we've just got 7, which feels much more manageable. And I'm going to even reduce one of them. Our D chord, our 2 chord in the case of a minor scale, is going to be what's called a diminished chord. You'll hear it sounds like this. It's very dissonant. It's not going to sound great for the beginner. It's going to be kind of hard to use. So we're actually just going to delete it. as an option. We're not going to use a D chord in the beginning here. Now we're going to start writing a theme with the 6 remaining chords that we have available to us. We have C minor, E flat major, F minor, G minor, A flat major, and B flat major. So we've got 6 chords here, which we can combine in different orders to create what we refer to as a chord progression. So the chord progression over the course of 8 bars is what's going to give us this sense of continuity, as if there's a flow to what we're doing and that it's not just random. So I'm going to start with the most basic form of a chord progression, which is sort of a 1-to-1 harmonic rhythm. And what I mean by this is that we're going to have 1 chord per 1 bar. So I'm going to delete these chords for now, and I'm going to start on my C minor chord. And I'm going to duplicate it until I've got 8 different chords here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to play around with the different chords that I have available to me, again, not using the D diminished chord, and I'm going to come up with a chord progression. So I'm going to start on my C minor. You're in C minor. Let's start on the 1 chord to establish to the listener that we're in C minor definitively. And then after that, I can play around and go to kind of whichever chord I feel. So I'm going to use now a very common chord progression just to give you an idea of one of the many options we have available to us. So I'm going to go from C down to A flat major, up to B flat major, down to E flat major, and then I'm going to go to F minor, G minor, A flat major, and back up to B flat major. So now I'm going to click play, and let's see what this sounds like. And don't be afraid to pause here and really play around. Spend 20 minutes, spend 30 minutes playing around with all the different chord progressions that you have available to you. You realize that even with just 7, you've got a bajillion options. But what I'm going to say, I'm going to create 2 rules for the beginner here when you're playing around and messing around. Is that 1, we're going to start on our 1 chord. We're going to start on C minor to ensure that it becomes clear that we're in C minor because we're starting with a C minor chord. And I would like you to end, for reasons that will make sense later on, but just trust me on this, your final chord, I want it to either be a B flat major chord or a G minor chord, one of those 2. So those are the 2 rules you have in the beginning when coming up with your chord progression. So please do pause the video and try and come up with your own chord progression. If you would like to just copy mine the first time, that's phenomenal. That's great. If you want to copy mine and come up with a few themes using this chord progression or a slightly varied chord progression, don't be afraid to repeat chords. You'll see in this case, I've got the A flat major twice. I've got the B flat major twice. You can have your C minor multiple times, your F minor multiple times. You can repeat chords all you want. You could flip back and forth between 2 chords for the whole chord progression if you really wanted to. There's no rules right now other than starting on C minor and ending on B flat major or G minor. Now, I know I'm going a little bit fast, and I don't want you to feel like you have to understand why I'm doing everything that I'm doing up to this point in the video. Really, the point here is to skip the tutorial series, which takes 20 videos before you actually get to the composition process. I'm asking you to take my word on a few things and just go with it. Create a few themes using the rules that I give you, and then after we've done that and we've created something musically and you have an idea in your ear as to what we can create with C minor, then when we start to talk about the rules, they're going to make a lot more sense, and you're going to have a lot more like, oh, aha moments. Oh, I figured that out on my own. Oh, that's really helpful. I'll try that in the future. Having the experience of making the music followed by the lesson, I think, is the best way possible if it works. I know that sounds sort of counterintuitive, but I think that doing followed by learning is the best way for it to really, really sink in, and is the best way that you're going to learn long term. And I just want to get into creating music as fast as possible. So I've got my chord progression here in front of me. This is halfway to my first 8-bar theme, right? So now the thing to do is to come up with a melody. And now this is where it's a lot more random. But here's the rule I'm going to have you follow in the beginning. We don't always have to follow this rule moving forward, but for now, just to get started, I'm going to have you use only notes that appear in the chord. So, in other words, when I start creating a melody here, and I'm going to do it on top of my chord so that I can really hear the melody, I'm going to have you stick to just the 3 notes which are in the chord underneath it. So in the beginning, I've got C, E flat, and G. So let's just come up with something which is some combination of, let's just start with like quarter notes, eighth notes, and half notes and see what we can come up with that's interesting. So I'm going to start on E flat. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select all of my chords. I'm going to hold Command on my keyboard until I see this 70, or it could be any number between 0 and like 127. It would go up to 127, down to 1 in Ableton. That's just the range. What this number represents here is our velocity. So if I play this now, it's going to sound like I'm playing the piano incredibly softly. Now I'm going to Command All again, and I'm going to hold Command and then drag up. And now it's going to sound like I'm playing the piano as hard as I can. What I'd like to do for my chords is to get them somewhere down in this sort of medium range, somewhere around 70s or 80s. And then my melody on top, I want to be a little bit higher so that it really stands out and is really clear. This is just helping your ear to really know and focus in on the melody on top of the chords, because higher notes can be a little bit quieter naturally. So this is just a tip for your piano writing to make sure that the melody really stands out, is to have the melody be a little bit harder in its intensity. So like I said, I'm going to start with just chord tones and see what I can come up with. Okay. So now I've got this introduction idea. So I've got, which is the start to my melody. It doesn't have to be that. It could be any number of rhythmic ideas. But like I said, I'm going to start on one of the notes in the C minor, and then I'm just going to use other notes in C minor and create some sort of rhythm here. And I'm just going to duplicate this and maybe move this G up to A flat so that it fits the chord underneath it now. And let's see what this sounds like. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change the rhythm of my melody a little bit. Okay, so my my camera died on me, so now I'm going to the webcam. So let's resume. So we had and now I'm going to change up the rhythm a little bit, and I've got this B flat major chord. So maybe I'll go up to the B flat, and I'm going to just extend this a little bit, give the melody's moving pretty fast. I'm going to give it a little bit of room to breathe, have some longer extended notes here. Maybe do something like, I kind of maybe want it to go to the F. Yeah, I think I like that better. Maybe this time I go up to the B flat and then end it on an E flat. Maybe end on the G. Yeah, I think I like that better. And now I'm going to go back to the faster pacing a little bit and maybe change it up just ever so slightly. I mean, now I've got an F minor chord, so let's start on the F instead of the E flat. I think what I'm going to do is just pick up the pace even a little bit more. So I'm going to take this note and I'm going to shorten it a little bit and do maybe something like this. Let's see what this sounds like. Maybe. Yeah, I like that more. And then I'll just have it go up with the G minor chord. And then I'll go back to my sort of slower paced rhythm here. Maybe go to, I've got the C, A flat. And then I could go like this. Yeah, that sounds good. All right, so I have just created, in the span of just a minute or two, an 8-bar theme. If you want to copy this note for note, that's totally fine. But the idea is to just do this a few times. Draw in notes. Don't be afraid to use lots of repetition regarding rhythm. Make sure that your notes are following the chord quality that you've got underneath. Start on your minor 1 chord and end either on the B flat major or the G minor, and come up with a theme. And mine just so happens to sound like this. Okay, so there's a theme. It's done, and I did that in just a minute or two. One thing I want to say, due to the amount of times that I've done this and created themes, I've got lots of intuitive ideas as to what's going to sound good and what's going to work. So the speed at which you see me doing this, if you're just starting, please, please, please don't expect yourself to move that fast. I'm really just trying to move fast for the sake of not making the video boring. But don't be afraid to spend 20, 30 minutes on your melody. Or even more, or a little bit less, whatever you want to do. And don't be afraid to move a chord if you don't like the options that you have available to you. So my theory essentially is this. What we need to create our first theme is a scale and a rough structure. So in this case, by structure, I mean that we're working with 8 bars. We're using 1 chord per bar, and we're starting on C minor and ending on B flat major or G minor. Now, the reasons for those things will make sense musically over time. But like I said, I want to get you writing a theme instead of explaining all this before we ever start writing. So play around, see what you can come up with. Copy my chord progression, draw in new chord progressions. Try writing a theme at a really slow tempo. Try writing a theme at a really fast tempo. Try writing a theme where every bar has the same rhythmic activity, meaning that although the pitch of the note might change, you know, what it would mean, for example, to have the same rhythmic activity would mean I would be doing something like this, where this rhythm would just continue, and just see what it sounds like. Or have each bar have different rhythmic activity. Just see what works for you and just play around. This is the beginning. It doesn't need to sound like John Williams right away, but if you've never created a theme before, with these rules and structures in place, you can create something which sounds genuinely very musical. And it's going to be a complete theme because it's got both harmony, melody above it, and we're starting on our minor 1 chord and ending on what we're going to refer to as sort of dominant functioning chords. You'll understand what that means later on. But the point is that we're going to end in such a way that it sort of sounds like the equivalent of a musical comma. Like we've finished our thought, but there's more to go. And that's intentionally how I want you to be writing your themes in the beginning. Is all right, this is a complete thought, but it's not a complete piece of music. We're not preparing ourselves to write just 8-bar pieces of music for all eternity. Otherwise, that would get a little bit boring. So what I want you to feel like is you're writing something that sounds complete, but that could keep going. That's the idea here. So if you have any questions, please do let me know in the comments. We're going to be spending the next multiple videos just over and over and over again writing themes. We're going to get really good at this. We're going to learn things called the period form, the sentence form. We're going to learn about different cadences, different chord functions. We're going to start using 7 chords, suspensions. We're going to be using things like tritones, and syncopation and leading tones, and I can use word after word after word. And eventually we're going to get into the different modes, which effectively function as different scales. So we think of as just having minor and major, but we've actually got many more modes or scales available to us, which allows for things called modal interchange, chromatic mediants. And I don't throw all that at you to, flex my musical knowledge or to intimidate you. It's really just to show that, like, look, if this is what we can do with the restrictions that we have in place, think about how much more we can do once we begin to learn some of these more advanced techniques for our 8-bar theme writing. And over the next 10, 15 videos, we're going to get really, really, really good at this. And so I hope you found that interesting. I hope you enjoy creating your very first theme. and I will catch you all next week when we are going to take our next step in our theme writing. If you found this video to be helpful, if you enjoyed it, please do subscribe and leave a like on the video. Until next time, I will catch you all later. Take care.